call the meeting to order at 5:30. Any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
No. Okay, good. And approval of minutes of January 22nd.
I move that we approve the minutes from January 22nd.
And I second.
So it's been moved and approved to adjust the minutes, or to approve the minutes of January 22nd. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Public comment on items not on the agenda. Anybody here for public comment? No. Okay. So we're right on to select board items. And first on our list is Windham Windsor Housing Trust, but they are not here yet. So why don't we start with the Putney Mountain land discussion and
Sure.
move from there. So is that you, Ann, that's presenting that? or-
Here's Peter and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay, that's fine because I'm awaiting Pat Shields also. So that works really well.
Hi.
Hi, Peter. Just got here in the middle.
So we just started and you guys are
We're
up.
on.
So if you're ready,
Sure.
jump right in.
Okay. Do you mind if I just take my photo?
Not at all.
So, hi there. So I'm Elizabeth Bridgewater with the Windham and Windsor Housing Trust. This is Pete Hadji, my colleague.
If you want
Okay.
to go over it, you're welcome to.
Hi there. And we're delighted that you put us on the agenda to talk about some current work that we're doing in Putney. Many people know that we have an option to purchase the parcel of land that's adjacent to the Putney Food Co-op, Putney Meadows, and on Alice Hallway Drive. And our intention with that land is to build a small-scale village-style neighborhood that's in a clustered pattern that's compatible with Putney's historic housing designs, but also incorporating modern energy efficiency and building performance measures. So for every project that we take on, we conduct due diligence on the project that includes financial feasibility. We assess market demand and determine whether there's any environmental or land use concerns. This is what we call a feasibility phase. In this case, there's two groups, as you know, that are already using the land, the Putney Farmers Market and the Putney Gardens. And so we backed up into what we're calling a pre-feasibility phase, because when we did some outreach with these two groups, we were immediately intrigued by the synergistic nature of this three potential uses on the land of housing and food and community and economic development. And so we wanted to engage with the farmers market and the gardeners early on to help us think about the site and what that might mean for us and for them. And we wanted to see if we could develop a common vision that would maintain their current use and in particular help the farmers market expand, because that was part of their intention long before we had got an option to purchase the land. So we started meeting last June, and we've been meeting ever since. We raised some money to hire a facilitator because we thought that would be useful to have someone come in and work with us as a group. We wanted to work with somebody that had land use planning expertise so that any ideas that we came up with could get vetted against permit concerns, land use concerns. And we did somewhat of a light touch in that area to make sure that any ideas that we came up with as a group were feasible kind of at a top level. And so we've been meeting together since last summer. I'd say we've met every 6 weeks or so. So it's been a really great process. We've gotten to know each other a lot, gotten to really understand each other's concerns. We've learned a lot about how this works and how we might work together. We've talked about a lot of different things. And we are ready to move into a more formal feasibility process. And we are looking forward to doing that with the community gardens and with the farmers market. I think everybody's really excited to continue our work together. This is the phase of the project that we will dig more deeply into all of the issues that I mentioned and formalize our site design and the land use design. So we're here partly because we're aware that some questions have come up at previous meetings and just in the Putney community about where we are in the process. what our intentions are. And so hopefully from what I just described, you can see that we're pretty early on, and we're very much focused on engaging the two groups that are using the land right now to make sure that we can have a feasible housing project without displacing those two groups. And that's really where our focus has been to date. As we move into the more formal feasibility process, that's where we engage the broader community. We always do that in all of our processes. And at that stage, we'll be looking more at more detail at the site design, starting to develop concepts for the buildings themselves. And so we look forward to using this forum and also broader community forums where we'll engage the broader public around this process. So that's what we came to share, but we're also willing to answer any questions that you might have.
I, as you know, am a partial owner of that land.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion altogether. One thing I want to point out, you have a copy of something that was presented to us at a previous meeting, and I just...
And we know this is just like preliminary. So as the zoning administrator, at some point, it might be good to bring the town in. I know you're working with Pip Bannister too, right?
Yeah, we've chatted with them.
Pip's been at some of these meetings kind of as a general community member, but then shared some of his expertise in planning and zoning also. Yeah.
Okay. So I know this is not the site plan, that would come to the development review board, but I'll be keeping on top of developments, and from time to time, Peter, I'm sure you and I will be speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And as Elizabeth said, you know, we were in the kind of the discussion phase with the gardens and the farmers market to really make sure that there could be common use on that land between all three uses. But in terms of any sort of permitting, we would obviously, you know, bring our ideas to you first because it is a challenging site. And through this process, and with the help of Stevens and Associates, we identified what some of those concerns would be, and what we would look at in a formal feasibility process, formal design process.
Right.
And you know, for an actual permitting, we're well ahead of that. You know, we would be looking at least a year out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's early, and
Yep.
you know, Pip is familiar with the zoning regs because he is the chair. I'm familiar with them too, so yeah. Any questions you have, you can talk to either one of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very much looking forward to working with you. We didn't feel like it was, we were really at the top level discussions.
Right.
And so we've been keeping it focused in that part of the process. But certainly when we get to the next phase, we're very much looking forward to engaging you in conversation about what our ideas are.
Good.
I'm curious what the timeline is from like start to finish. So you're going to be entering the feasibility study phase soon. When do you think, if all goes well and everything is smooth, when would you be looking to break ground? When would you be looking to finalize?
So we have an option to purchase the land that expires in, I think it's August 1st. And we need to finalize some key due diligence tasks before we can close on that property. And that is because of HUD regulations. Mm-hmm. And that includes some of the environmental review work that HUD requires us to do. So we'll be focusing our early feasibility on that. And then, of course, the funding cycles are pretty set with the state, so we're going to be locked into those funding cycles. But if all goes well, and according to, you know, and then we get through the environmental review process and we close on the property, we would be looking to begin fundraising in the fall and in the next spring. So throughout that whole process, we would be working with the zoning administrator, the zoning board to get our permits and finalize the site design, look at the building design, engaging the community during that process. All gearing up to those funding applications. So some of them will happen in the fall or late winter, might even be early winter of 2021. And then the biggest source of funding, which is also the most competitive source, happens every April. And so that would, if we're successful with this, we would be successful in getting those funds in April of 2021. And then we would go into a formal process of finalizing construction level documents and any other steps that we need to take around permitting or any other concerns that come up during that process, and to get to a closing, which would, our cycle is usually sometime in the fall. So we wouldn't even think about construction starting until the fall of 2021. So it kind of gives you a few of the steps along the way, but that's when, that's the earliest that it could happen.
Okay. And how many units are you considering?
24.
24? And are they single occupancy for families? What's the?
We don't have that configuration yet.
Okay.
What we looked at in this phase was really like blocks on a page, which is I think what you've been looking at, is just to make sure that we had enough space given the current use
Right.
to fit, and so the next phase would be to really dig in more deeply into the elevation issues, water runoff, and some of the concerns I'm sure that you have,
Yeah,
and
I
see,
have several, so.
yeah, and see where that might end up.
And is this actually, like, is this a preliminary plan? Is this what you're considering it looking like?
Can you turn that around again? 'Cause I think it's actually changed.
Yeah, because there's only 20 units on
Yeah,
that plan.
it's
I think
changed
said
since-
24.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an earlier concept that we were looking at.
The process that we were going through now was to see if there was some configurations that could work for all, where these three uses could exist on the site. If you notice, that doesn't take into account any sort of grading, that doesn't take into account, you know, any sort of building design or
Right.
foundations or anything. It was really just, the process we were in now was to see if the gardens, the farmer's market, and a potential housing development could exist on one site. Before getting into, you know, some of these, quite frankly, more expensive details to explore, to see if there was just a way that we could all exist. And that's kind of the process that we're in right now. So.
And you've come to the conclusion that you can all coexist?
I think we've come to the conclusion that we can go to the next phase to really explore that in more detail,
Okay.
and that it's worth the next step, which costs more money.
Okay.
And so that's where we're at right now, is that we have a loose sense that yes, I think this could work, but we still have a lot more questions to answer and a lot more detail to explore.
So you're working with Putney Meadows as well, right?
We haven't actually engaged Putney Meadows to date,
Really? Because that's where that came from.
and I have no idea how they got their hands on it, because they, yeah,
So, I'm glad you're here tonight.
right.
I just want to commend you for the process up until this point. I know it's really appreciated that you dove into a complex situation and tried to find ways to make it a collaborative kind of situation. And I can see if it does work out, it sounds very exciting to me, the possibilities.
Well, I will say, I think it's really exciting. When we first met with the farmers market and some of the gardeners in June, and there was a lot of, I think, fear around what we were going to do at that meeting, and they didn't know us very well and didn't know what our process was, and so we had reached out to them the same way we're coming here, just to say, we're hearing some chatter in the community, let's reach out. And they made they described a very compelling and exciting vision of the farmers market and the gardens and the co-op and the extension of the village, and how this could really be an exciting joint project. And we just immediately were really excited and dove right in. And it's just been a really wonderful process. I think hiring a facilitator was really great because it gave us all equal footing around the table. We weren't leading the discussions, and it gave us a chance to each come to the table and be a player and share our concerns equally. And we've I think everybody's gotten out a lot of what their concerns are, and we're excited to move to the next phase together. It's been a really good process.
So if it doesn't work out with the farmer's market or the community garden, are you committed to moving forward? In other words, if you can't come to an agreement, are you going to still pursue putting in units?
I think that I'm not prepared to say yes or no right now.
Okay.
Because it's really important, I think, to really explore these questions first before answering that one.
All right.
Howard?
Mr. Chairman, first, full disclosure, I am a Windham and Windsor Housing Trust tenant, but I'm here as purely as a private citizen. Two questions that could be helpful to, especially to those watching on TV who didn't see any diagram. Are we talking about the land that is bounded by Route 5, Carroll Brown Way, and Alice Holman Drive, I believe it is?
We are.
We are?
Yes.
And how many?
Sorry, you can see on here, some of it is actually on the other side of Alice Holloway Drive.
Oh,
So it's not bounded.
even though this is what you're planning, are you okay showing? This is, you changed.
It kind of shows where the lots are, I
Okay.
suppose. So.
Right,
Yeah,
but
it's
that's
not
not,
my plan.
that's not the sketch.
So that's, I see, yes, so it actually adjoins Putney Meadows
Yes.
on the other side of the road.
Yes.
Okay, so my other question is, about how many acres are involved here?
It's around, I think it's 4. 4 total acres. There's 6 lots, 3 in that middle island parcel that's completely bound by Carroll Brown, Alice Holloway, and Route 5, and then 3 on the other side. And it's pretty evenly split, I think, about 2 and 2. So.
Jan?
So as a gardener, I've been informally involved with some of these meetings, and just one piece that I wanted to share that maybe wasn't made clear is that the driving force of the farmers market, and particularly the farmers market and the garden, is that to preserve as much green space as we can for the community, and that this become a community space with wider use than just the garden and the farmers market. We have envisioned that there'd be play space for children and other things which are still in the idea stage, but it's not just to preserve a space for the farmers market to expand or the garden to maintain its lovely tranquility, some of which may be lost, but to create an open community space that could be used for many things going forward. And that's been really driving force in the vision for our working together on all this. And Windham and Windsor have understood that and have been supportive. So.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we look forward to meeting with you again over the next, like we said, it'll be about 1.5 years, so it'll be a nice long process. So.
Yeah. And when you're ready, you can call me if you want me to come to a meeting.
Okay, great, thank you
Okay.
for offering that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
all right.
Thank you, everyone.
See you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Good
You
night.
Okay. So now, back to Putney Mountain land discussion.
I'm Ann Carey, Chair of the Conservation Commission. And Karen said that you got this in your packet, and I also made copies, so you don't need these, is what I'm thinking. Correct?
We have
We have
You've got it.
Dated January 27, 2020.
Yeah, that's the most, I keep editing, so
Okay. As long as
this
we
is
have the
it.
right one, Ann.
This is it. Excuse me. So, basically, we're just reviewing what we already talked about briefly before. Pat Shields is here from the Putney Mountain Association. And I would just like to start by reviewing sort of the history of the forest from the town's point of view And then Pat will sort of review what Putney Mountain Association's history with the piece of land is also. So I'm starting on the second page. The forest is 134 acres. About 85 of those are in Brookline, which has created over the years a tax liability for the town because the town does owe taxes to Brookline, as you know. But starting way back when, this land was acquired in two pieces in 1948, more or less. The part closest to the road, to Putney Mountain Road, was acquired in 48. It was logged shortly after it was acquired, and that land came given to the town. There was no cost associated with it, and about 30,000 board feet of lumber were taken out, and the town garage was built with that lumber, which I think was right across the street here at one point. And then later on, the north portion was bought by the town at a foreclosure sale for $250. So the acquisition price way back when, in the late 40s, was $250. So the other thing that's consistently happened with the town is that when the second piece came to the town, there was a town meeting vote in 1950 to not log anymore and to keep the land as for recreational purposes. And that was done. And at another town meeting later on in 1998, the residents voted to try to get the Vermont Land Trust to put an easement, conservation easement on the land, which was passed. But then I guess there was some additional discussion thereafter, and in the 1999 town meeting, people decided they didn't want to go forward with an easement, but they did reaffirm that the select board was to hold and conserve the entire town forest for recreation and wildlife protection, which sort of reinforced and expanded the 1950 vote. So there's been a history of many, many years, 70 years, of the town holding this land for recreational use. And so upon transfer, we had suggested some deed restrictions which would continue that thrust, of those various town meetings over time. Now, Putney Mountain, the town, as far as I can figure out, contributed in 1997 to the construction of the parking area, the upgrade of the parking area off Putney Mountain Road. And Pat can speak more about what the contributions of Putney Mountain were in that regard. But we helped, I think the road crew helped with the construction of that parking area in 1997. Since then, it's pretty much been Putney Mountain Association. So that's over 20 years. And in regard to the possible, we'd have the benefit of making sure the land was safe and it continued to be used for what the town wanted it used for if this transfer occurred. But there are also some financial considerations, which is on the first page, which is that we currently have a tax liability of approximately $2,000 a year to Brookline. And Jordy is here. He's helped us run these numbers because he knows the tax law. And that's, if you have questions, I'm going to refer you to him if you are worried about calculations, because I don't know what they are. But if we did sell or transfer the town forest to the Putney Mountain Association, our tax liability to Brookline goes away because we don't own the land. That's pretty straightforward. So that's a $2,000 liability that we would no longer have. We would then start receiving on the town portion of the town forest, the portion of the town forest which is located in Putney, which is about 48.8 acres. And we've calculated that that might bring in about $900 a year in taxes to the town. And then additional consideration is that currently the town of Brookline pays Putney an amount very similar to our tax obligation to them, in the $2,000 range, for road maintenance of the end of Holland Hill Road and Bennett Road, which is both of which are in Brookline. And the town maintains those roads, winter and summer, grading, gravel, snow plowing. And for that service, Brookline is paying the town approximately the same amount as we owe them in taxes. Money actually goes back and forth. But following the transfer, Putney would have to work out we'd have to see if Brookline wanted us to continue those services, and if so, how much they might pay Putney for doing that. That might be another source of income, or if they don't want us to do it, then we would save the money we are now spending on that work from the highway budget. So I just wanted to mention, those possible, well, probably likely financial benefits of the transfer. And that is really all I have to say. And I'd like Pat to spend some time talking about what Putney Mountain has been doing with the land, because conservation has nothing to do with this piece of land. And I think since we did the parking lot, pretty much the town hasn't done anything, except perhaps out of the goodness of some road crew hearts, like maybe plowing a little piece of the parking lot or, something like that. But basically, for more than 20 years, we, as far as I know, haven't had much interaction, if any, with this land in terms of management. Putney Mountain's been doing all of it, and Pat will talk a little bit about what those things have been.
Can I just ask one clarifying question?
Sure.
Sorry. I have been under, well, maybe you're about to explain this. I've been under the impression that it was actually two different parcels. Is that not right? It just is because they're in two different towns that it appears as two different parcels?
It's very complicated. Originally, it was two different parcels that had nothing to, all the land was in Putney. It was two different parcels to begin with. In 1936, evidently, this is a title search that was done by the old Conservation Commission. There was a woman who gave the town a half interest in her land. That was the land closest to, and then I don't know what happened, but there had to be a court decision dividing the land eventually between the town and this person. And that's when we got a section of the town forest that was closest to Putney Mountain Road. So that facilitated the logging because there was access from the road. And then later on, there was a piece of land to the north that went into foreclosure, and for $250, the town bought it.
Okay.
So that comprised the town forest. Then at some point, there was a town line. I guess the town line's been moved a number of times between Putney and Brookline. And it ended up somehow that of that Putney town forest, 85 ended up on the Brookline side of a town line adjustment. And I don't know the date that happened. And I think the town wasn't really too much aware of it because they didn't pay taxes for a long time, and
Right.
Brookline was threatening to foreclose, and then they worked out the deal with the roads, or the road maintenance. So there were two different parcels to begin with in putting the town forest together, and then the town line adjustment made it two different. I mean, they weren't the exact same parcels, but it put it into two different parcels again.
Okay. What I wanted to give you some maps just to, I think it will be easier to understand how this fits with Putney Mountain's land.
Thank you, Pat.
So we're talking about the parcels in red here. And the parcels in red are really the doorway to the summit owned by Putney Mountain and to all of our lands going north. And then across the street, we have an easement that gets us to our lands going south. For all intents and purposes, Putney Mountain has really been stewarding this land and kind of thinking it was our, taking care of it as if it was our own, both the piece that was in Putney and then the piece that was in Brookline. And the loop trail actually goes through Putney and Brookline coming back. Okay?
It doesn't get into Putney at all.
Oh, no, the whole,
The town line is down
okay.
the slope.
All right, so the loop
But
trail.
it's all town forest.
It's all town forest. So our taking care of it went back to the 50s, where there was a work crew to kind of clear out the town forest land up to the summit. And then basically Ann referred to the grading of the parking lot in the late 90s. Actually, PMA applied for some $2,200, and it was a joint effort between PMA and then the town provided some labor and equipment for that. Since in the last 10 years, on the second page you can see, we've been really active in taking care of that land. That's a very heavily used trail, both going up to the summit and coming back on the west cliff. And so we've had to, on a foliage weekend, it sees over 100 people a day. You know, and so it can get very muddy, so we've had to do considerable work. We've invested money in doing that. So when Ann came and said, would Putney Mountain be interested in accepting this land, it made sense to us because we were already taking care of it. What we would do with it is we would enroll it in the current use program under conservation, which is a category open to nonprofit conservation organizations. And then we would pay taxes at the current use level, both to Putney and to Brookline, and the state would make up the difference. So that's how you'll get the tax benefit.
Right.
We weren't planning to put a conservation easement on it right away, and that's why we asked for some deed restrictions. And the reason for that is it costs us about $22,000 to put a conservation easement with Vermont Land Trust now on a parcel of land. That's really hard money to fundraise for as just a single project. So what we do is raise for conservation easements in conjunction with raising money for an acquisition. So if we could ever piggyback that, we would do that. But we feel that with the deed restrictions on it, it's gonna be preserved because we're gonna put it in conservation.
The initial idea of the town, one of the older town meeting votes, when they thought about putting a easement on running to the Vermont Land Trust, let's see, that was in conjunction with Putney Mountain Association Summit was going to be have a conservation easement on it, and Windham Hill Pinnacle land to the north of that in other words, it was a package deal like Pat's talking about, where the easement would have covered Putney Mountain land, town land, and Pinnacle land, and that's what didn't go ahead. But packaging it like that, it's always $15,000 to $20,000 in that range to get a Vermont Land Trust easement on a piece of land. It's a lot of work, and they have a stewardship fund that they fund too.
Is that do you think it was for financial reasons that they chose to rescind the resolution?
I think it may have been partially for that, but there's also just sort of, I think, a tendency on a number of residents' parts of not wanting to turn over control to any other outside entity. I think that's been sort of a strain of thought that runs along through certain decisions.
So I'm curious if there would be public support for it now for...
Can I just add, so we talked about having an article on the warning at town meeting for the potential of selling this property. So I consulted with legal counsel, and he's recommended that we we present it at town meeting as a non-binding item under other business. So at that point, and I would invite Pat and Jordy and anyone else who wanted to speak on that. and bring it to the public at town meeting and see how they feel and try to get a consensus. And the select board can sell property, town-owned property. We have to post it 30 days in advance. We do a public informational hearing, and then we can move forward that way.
So even if we got a consensus at town meeting day, we would still go through the process of posting it and doing,
Yeah,
okay,
it's, state
Okay.
statute, that's
yeah,
the process.
all right.
So that's the process for moving toward a vote of the select board. That's a public hearing, a second public hearing,
Right.
that before the select board would vote to actually transfer the property. If that's that's what you're thinking of,
Yeah, so it'd be brought up at town meeting,
right?
so that technically would be the first hearing, which we would have to post.
Can we do that as a hearing at town meeting?
I'll have to check
Yeah,
with
we
Larry
should
just to
confirm that.
confirm it. But if it's on the agenda,
Right, certainly
Right,
discussion, it's just I'm
right.
not sure it would count. I don't
as the
know.
first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So-
but I'll check with him. But I think if it's posted legally,
Yeah.
30 days in advance.
Yeah.
And we can always do a second hearing as well.
Mhm.
And the tax income, is it something that you would ask for relief from after?
No, Putney Mountain, we voluntarily pay our taxes because we feel that that's important in order to get support for conservation.
I'm sorry, Pat, I sort of got lost in, so would you seek an easement on this piece or not?
We would not unless
Okay.
we could do it in conjunction with another project where we would raise money for the easement.
I see.
It's,
Because it's
Because of
virtually,
the cost.
it's
Yeah, no,
virtually impossible to raise, not impossible, but
Very hard to raise.
very hard to
If
raise
they were
money.
gonna acquire, it's much easier to fundraise if you're gonna acquire a
Acquire
new piece of
parcel.
land,
Right.
yeah.
No, I
And
caught all that. but
Most
somehow
of the
missed it.
people I've talked to in Putney sort of say, oh, don't they own that already?
Right.
So it'd be,
No, they're just doing all the work.
yeah.
and since Putney Mountain would own it with deed restrictions, and Putney Mountain is a land conservation organization, there's very little need
Right, for an
For-
actual
for-
easement.
for
Yeah,
an actual easement.
yeah.
And actually, for us to enroll it in current use, we have to prepare a management plan.
Right, of course.
Only
yeah.
it's managed for conservation.
Yeah.
And-
So just for reference, Jordy, on this map, this is Dusty Ridge, is that right? Where it changes from PMA to,
No, this is Five Corners. No, this is Five Corners.
which is,
This is Holden Road down to.
oh, okay.
And this is Mill, no, this is Grassy Brook. So this is that Class 4 road.
That goes
Town line
over,
is
so
here.
this is the extension of Holden Road?
Yeah,
That's where it transferred that, so that's.
so right
done
here
right
is
there.
where Adam lives.
The old
Right,
grain trailer
yeah,
is right down there.
Yeah.
The green trailer is
Right there.
down
Yeah,
now,
right, okay.
Okay.
Picture.
It's funny how Holland and Putney Mountain are spread on the map. I think they'd be more parallel.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
always on that
Nice
side.
job.
By the old school, so hard there below. Hillendale.
I
When
was
you're
just,
looking at that.
they're still busy.
So this is Dusty Ridge right here, so this is, but that doesn't, I guess that must be there.
We get
So
the
this is
intro.
Dusty Ridge here? Must be.
No, it's
No.
past it.
Dusty Ridge, this is Pete Gunther's,
Oh, okay.
so.
I see.
mowing-
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
Bailey Road,
yeah.
so it's Jesse's.
Right. Yeah, no, I knew that all made sense, but then I couldn't,
This is-
I just was envisioning that. I was like, wait a minute, that seems like it
It's
should be
right in
there.
the corner. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
And
All right.
I just
Yes.
had one other comment. I was just wondering if it would be, I know the attorney's already been in conversations about this, with Karen. But could these documents, especially the deed restrictions, be reviewed by him as well? Like the history and the deed restrictions, and see what he thinks about that. And maybe Pat's, I don't know whether he'd be interested in Pat's activities, but it seems relevant.
Yeah, no, I can provide him with supporting documentation.
Okay, that'd be
Because
great.
the more,
Because I just Pat and I sort of worked on the deed restrictions based on some of the Vermont Land Trust documents and some of our own ideas. So this is not coming from a legal source
Right.
at this point.
yeah, there's a ways to go with this
Mm-hmm.
once we get past town meeting. So,
Town meeting will be fun.
Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I should like to ask the speakers a question.
Certainly.
You mentioned $20,000 to $25,000 to achieve conservation easement. Could you give us a bit of detail about what that money pays for?
That pays for Vermont Land Trust's staff and work and their stewardship of the land.
And
Okay,
legal fees.
And legal fees. So that is a fee that we pay to the Vermont Land Trust. They do an ecological assessment of the land. Then we jointly do a management plan for that. They review it. And then they also, because once they have a conservation easement on it, they monitor it going forward. And so that's part of their cost too.
Yeah, they have a stewardship fund, and part of the money that
Yeah.
Putney Mountain Association would give them goes into their stewardship fund. That's invested, that generates the money to pay the stewards to go out and check that people are following the agreements.
Is there anything in what they do that you're not already doing?
Is there anything what?
Anything that, the services that they would offer that you don't already do in the Putney Mountain Association? It seems like you do a lot of those
In
things.
terms of the land, management of the
Yeah.
land, no. This is in terms of planning for the land.
Okay,
And then they hold the legal rights so that it can't be developed
got it.
except for in accordance with what's in the easement.
And isn't some of our grant funding contingent on having that conservation easement?
Yes, when we use any of the state money from the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and last month, we just got a grant of $116,000 for,
wow,
we're extending our lands and a trail down to Prospect Hill. Then as a contingency on that money, we have to put an easement on it with the Vermont Land Trust, and it's held jointly with VHCB.
With the survey that they do, what does that look like? Do they study every possible species in the,
No.
what is
That's
that?
not that, they do, first of all, not an off-the-land survey of the land using, the Vermont's conservation design, and see what's on the land that way. And then they do an on-the-site, walking around and doing it.
Looking for rare endangered plants.
Vernal pools.
Vernal pools in sensitive areas.
We have some endangered species on our land going north, and they would look to see whether. And in terms of this particular parcel of land, we're not going to find any rare and endangered species on it.
so Pat, do they also look at forest management plan
We jointly develop a plan with them.
together? Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're going into current use, you're required to do that anyway,
Exactly.
so.
The plans are just a little bit different,
Yeah.
but
No, I mean, I think the sort of most basic answer I would have to your question is the scale of the organization is so much bigger that the Vermont Land Trust has more financial backing. I mean, I think we are very fortunate to have Putney Mountain Association be a very stable organization, but the Vermont Land Trust's ability to have legal support, state funding, so on and so forth is much greater. So them holding an easement is just a more secure investment in the long-term conservation of the land. So there's value in it in that sense. And they then are responsible for stewardship, but you
They
guys,
don't do any.
I was gonna say, you guys are the ones who would actually do the work. They would just essentially confirm that the
Right.
plan is being followed.
Exactly.
That's their role in stewardship, is just to watch what's going on and sort of keep the paperwork to make sure that it keeps happening. So,
Thank you for educating me on that. Great, thank you.
anything else? Any other questions?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we see what the legalities are, or whether it's technically a hearing at town meeting. And then, I mean, I think that personally, hearings outside of town meeting are likely to draw people that are less likely to appear at town meeting.
Yeah.
And I think there's an advantage to that. So, I mean, it sounds like we would be required to have at least one other public
One or
hearing
two,
anyway,
yes,
but I
yeah.
think that would be, as far as getting people in to talk about
Transparency,
something,
yes.
exactly, I think that's a better idea anyway. So sort of regardless of how it works out with town meeting, we would be doing that in
Yeah.
addition, so I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing. All sounds reasonable, keep proceeding. I mean, it sounds like the Putney Mountain Association's goals are very well aligned with the town goals, and like David said, you're already doing it, so.
And the Conservation Commission doesn't want
Doing
it.
the work and paying the taxes,
And they-
perfect. Blessings to everybody.
No, and I have no idea, but I would certainly speculate that Brookline would have no interest in taking back the maintenance of those roads, so.
No, but,
I mean, that's not very realistic for them.
no.
Because they'd have to increase their workload to pick up Putney
Well,
Mountain
they're
Road up
land-
to
they're
Bennett Road,
landlocked,
and they don't want to do that.
exactly. So,
Because they
and
don't
we-
plow Putney Mountain Road in the winter.
You know, we have those arrangements with Westminster and
Right.
Yeah,
Brookline,
whatever
and, you
makes
know,
sense.
but
Yeah.
so,
I'll have to have that
Where-
conversation with them.
Where's the town line on Holland Hill Road? Where is it?
it's just past Betsy's.
It's just past Betsy's.
Betsy's still in
Yeah.
Putney,
Yeah, down
yeah,
in
Just a
depth.
smidge.
So it's right where the trail crosses, or just
more or
More or
less,
less.
yeah.
It's a little down the hill.
Yeah.
Kent Fields?
Right
It's
at
not
the
very much a
corner,
town
right?
hill, I think.
Yeah, right,
Ken-
somewhere right there.
right near
Yeah.
Ken-
It's the blue line,
Yeah, somewhere.
Good. Okay.
Pop in someday and I'll show you on
Yeah,
the town
Yep.
view map, just where all the houses are and what it looks like.
excellent, thank you.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Will
you.
you need me as a lister or am I?
No, you're
Anything?
fine.
Okay.
No, thank you for coming in, Jordy.
Thank you. We'll see you all.
Thank you.
Make sure you put it on
See
the
ya.
time sheet.
No, this was Putney Mountain.
All right, so,
Thank you,
proposed,
ladies.
Thank you.
have a good night. Proposed FY '21 general fund budget approval. So,
So before
any
you,
changes from, go ahead,
no,
yeah,
no changes, Josh,
yeah.
but there are two items I'd like to discuss
Mhm.
prior to approval of the general fund budget. So as you know, the library proposed FY '21 appropriation is already in the general budget.
Mhm.
Okay, so we won't be voting on the library budget because it's, the appropriation is
Is part of
in.
the general fund.
It is.
Right, yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
Second, I know we've discussed this, and, social service agency contributions. So Group A, right now, we have 4,
Do we?
It's in there.
It is in there.
Keep it flipping.
Yeah.
don't flip too much, okay, because people get so mixed up.
It looks like that.
Financials, yeah.
Maybe it's in there.
I think it might be on this side of his,
Under the staples?
It's like halfway through the stacking, right there, next page.
Yeah,
okay. So we're all on board now.
right.
So we have 4 organizations in Group A. As you know, Putney Community Cares and Putney Family Services merged last
Right,
year,
yeah.
okay? So we ended up doing 4 appropriations, even though 2 merged as 1, okay? So the question is, Do you want to continue to leave it as 4, or you do 3 and you divide it evenly?
So historically, it was, we divided it by the number, and even though this is one entity now, we're considering giving each part of it an equal share.
Which is what we did last year. We
Okay.
agreed to do that last, that was
Right.
part of the discussion. When they were debating the merger, they came and said, you know, this is a concern for us.
'Cause it was-
As it is
that's
now,
negative.
we get 2 allocations.
Right.
You know, can we continue to get 2 allocations going forward? And we agreed that, yes, that made sense because of the amount of service they provide. And we discussed how we would basically reconcile that going forward, but we haven't,
You have
we
not.
haven't come to a conclusion
Right.
as to how we would do that.
Now,
So-
can I mention too, for any entity, if they want an increase in their appropriation, they have to petition and get the recommended signatures on the petition and have an article at town meeting.
You mean in order to change from like Group C to Group B? Right.
No,
No.
but to even add more money, okay? So like, yeah, if Group C, somebody in Group C wanted to be in Group B, they'd
Right.
have to petition.
Right.
But, yeah, anyone wanting to change, an increase, would have to petition for that.
But there's no protocol for giving unequal shares to entities in any given group.
No.
It's divided by the number of people, number of.
Correct.
Got it, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
How do we decide, and I know we've had this discussion before, so I apologize if this question has come up before, but how do we decide how much service?
Yeah,
And so, for example, like the gathering place, many people go there during the day from Putney to spend time there. And I'm curious how that's considered to have a less significant level than SEVCA and youth services and.
May I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
So equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this
This is,
would
I
be
put this on their
a
radar.
task
Yeah.
for them to look at and
I
to
agree.
determine. Some towns are decreasing their appropriations to social agencies. I'm not sure that Putney even wants to consider something like that, but we have Equity and Inclusion Committee, and I think this would be a nice task for them to look at
Mhm.
and determine how we move forward.
Make a
when we,
recommendation.
when we got the packet earlier and described what the services were and the number of people they served, and I read it all, and I didn't really have any way of judging what that meant. Yeah,
Right.
maybe 700 people were served, but maybe each one of those 700 people got 5 minutes time, and maybe they got 3 weeks worth of help. I had no idea
Right.
of how to value that. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with that, and it
And-
seemed like we needed to follow that up.
Yeah.
So maybe some ought to get more, and maybe some ought to get less.
We-
How do you do that?
And is that unduplicated, that number, 700, or is that?
Right, exactly.
I know, it's.
We have looked at sort of more in-depth information about that occasionally in the past. You know, they provide to us each year
A report.
a report of how many people they serve. You know,
And it goes in the
some
town
of it like Groundworks, perhaps. No, probably not like Groundworks,
Well,
but
we can
so,
talk
or
about it.
some of it like the Gathering Place would likely be a little bit more of an estimate than hard. You know, I mean, a place like SEVCA can provide very clear information as to
Right.
the number of weatherization projects they did in
The
Putney.
extent of it. And
You know, and the Gathering Place, it's hard for them, you know, yes, they have lots of people from Putney coming in, but do they track it as, you know, and I'm picking on the
Yeah.
Gathering Place, I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's correct or not.
No, it's a
But
good-
it's a much harder
Yep.
sort of calculus for some of these than it is for
Right.
others. So, you know, it's worth reviewing every once in a while, and I think equity and inclusion would be a good place for that also. I mean, I agree, I
agree.
think that's a good spot. And, you know, it's also, you know, essentially our job to review, you know, this was originally adopted in 1999. We've been doing social service agencies before that, but this was the sort of retooled version of it as of then. and I can't remember the details.
Can I ask how you came up with 2.5%?
It
It's in
was,
the policy.
and
I'm just saying.
It's in the policy.
and I think that was an article at one point, I think.
Okay.
I would have
So
to
the
look
town voted
back.
on that.
I believe
Okay.
so.
And it's 0.025 on the overall operating budget. So that's general fund and highway.
Got it.
So,
And- Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I even would push a little bit further, and this is a good conversation for equity and inclusion, but just because an agency is based outside of Putney doesn't, you know, I question, like, there are agencies in here that may be serving Putney people more than
Right.
agencies within Putney. It's
I-
fully possible because they're in a hub community, so, you know, we're locked into a lot of services outside of Putney.
Is there any kind of formula, accepted formula for determining the value of a service like that we could put these?
No, I've
Businesses
looked
up
at other
against
towns
each other.
too,
Yeah, I was
so
gonna say,
everybody
but-
is on a different level.
How do you
I mean-
qualify having a homeless shelter outside of your community that takes all of your homeless community members and
Exactly.
shelters them?
Right.
And now you don't have that problem within your community.
That's
It's
why I'm asking
outside
the
of
question,
it.
I don't
You
know.
know, It's a really complex
Yeah.
issue.
And the 2.5% is not unusual for towns to have somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Somewhere between, 1.5% and 3.5% is sort of an average for a lot of towns. And
Okay.
what that's based on, I
Yeah,
don't
and
really
you're looking
know,
at
but.
40 to 50,000, you know. I know Newfane has reduced their social agency appropriations for 21. But again, I think somebody really needs to look into this.
Yeah.
And
Does
in-
Brattleboro do it to 2.5%?
Somewhere in that
It's the same.
ballpark, I can't remember.
I don't know what
I'm just
Brattleboro's
curious,
is,
like,
but their
how big-
budget is so much different than ours. We can't, I don't compare our, anything
Yeah.
like
Because
that
their scale
with
is
Brattleboro.
The
you know.
the
They have
comparison I was
such
trying to
a
make was
different
because of what Laura said about if you have a hub community and
Right.
they're providing more
Right.
services,
Right.
would they then spend a higher percentage? You know, how do we look at it? Is that another way to look at it?
But they have
Well-
additional funding beyond
And-
this
and I
that they
think-
allocate.
I think as to what you were asking about, sort of how you relate
Yeah.
the services provided by this to the services provided by this, if you just look at who these are in Group B, which are SEVCA, Visiting Nurse Alliance, Youth Services, Council on Aging, Healthcare and Rehab, they have the ability to go to a much greater community in order to raise money. For Putney, the Putney Community
Right.
Center,
Right.
what they do as a service in town, you may or may not feel that they do a whole lot, but their ability to reach out to a larger group is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of a commitment based
Get that.
strictly
Okay.
on them being within Putney, and then a commitment to the work they're doing. But should it be looked at regularly?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
that's an excellent point.
And the other thing too is perhaps we look at other towns, because I'm sure most of these organizations are getting funding
From
other-
most of,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wyndham County.
Well, I remember
Yeah,
reading
but they're
Vermont-
serving most of Windham County too.
Yes,
so it's-
definitely.
Vermont,
Yeah.
New Hampshire visiting nurses was getting contributions from like 88 communities or something
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh, well, great, that
Right.
makes a huge difference. It's what the point you're trying to make.
Of course, their budget is massive also,
Right.
but,
Right.
yeah, and again, their ability to bring in grant money and federal money and, all sorts of things is very different. But,
And I'm not discounting
yeah,
these
no, I know.
organizations do
It's-
in
but
any
it's
way
hard.
whatsoever. They're amazing, and
But
I
it's
know they.
hard.
Yeah.
but I'd like to make another comment that I know there was an organization in Group C. There were two other organizations merged with one. So there's actually three, but they're only getting a single appropriation.
Well, I don't know whether you're referring to Groundworks, but we had that discussion about Groundworks 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember.
I have to be careful on that
Yeah,
one too,
no,
because
I
I work
know,
Yeah,
for,
but-
my
full
point
disclosure, I work
is
for
that
Groundworks.
any one of these agencies can merge with
Yeah.
someone because of financial.
And like you said,
implications.
they,
It's
well,
like-
and like you said, they can also petition.
Right.
I mean, they can
Right.
come, they can come to us and
Right.
say, this is what we're doing for your town, and we'd like you to do more.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we can consider that. The other thing that's tricky is the way it's divided up, and not that this is a bad thing, but whenever you move from one group to another, it significantly dilutes the amount of, if you were to, for example, take another Group C person and put them in Group B, suddenly that 18,000 is divided by 6.
Right.
Their allocation it is divided by 6, or divided by 5. It would go to 6, their allocation would go to, drop by $700. That's a big change for them. So,
And I was looking at that in Group A, how these two impact, if it was broken up into 3, they
Right.
would each be getting $7,441.
Right.
exactly,
So,
which would be great for the two.
yeah,
And
they're
cut
getting
the other budget by
$1,860
Exactly,
less.
which is big,
Yeah.
so.
So what's your pleasure? Do
I
you
mean-
wanna leave it the way it is another year and have equity inclusion look at it?
We certainly need more information, I think.
Well, I don't think we have, I think it would be unfair based on our assertions made a year ago during this discussion with Putney Community Cares for us to cut that by a significant number.
Okay.
How it should be, I think, yes, we should definitely look at it. One of the questions would be, is there a way for us to analyze this so that we can justify different numbers for
Right.
different people? But this is how it breaks out from the policy, so we'd have to look at the whole policy and
Right.
go back to that. And this may be, our concern when we were talking about this is that we all knew what was going on,
Yeah, future.
but that 5 years from now,
Right.
a different select board sitting
Yeah.
here is gonna go, well, wait a minute, that's one organization,
Right.
why are they getting 2 things? So that was why the discussion happened, so we just need to be clear about it, and I think we're clear, or I'm certainly clear in my mind, that we made this commitment a year ago, and we should continue to honor that until we figure out a policy change that allows for
Okay,
that.
do you have that in the minutes?
And I think we should give them fair warning that we are considering a policy change so that they can adjust.
Well, and we did that in that discussion. We
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
this is something we're gonna be looking at, but we also made a pretty significant commitment to saying, we
Yeah.
wanna support you at this level
Right.
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future, and I think it would be a mistake. I mean, when you look at, they're all very different organizations, but what they provide is very different
Yeah.
too, so.
Okay.
Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, first, I commend the point you made earlier about Putney Community Center being basically a Putney-based organization, while others may be much more broadly based. And in that regard, not everyone is aware Vermont, New Hampshire Visiting Nurse and Hospice is now part of DHMC.
Right. Yeah,
I've confirmed that with people who work there.
yeah.
So with that in mind, when grassroots folks at town meeting are looking at this, we are being asked to oblige ourselves to make charitable donations to these organizations. And that's a good idea, but apropos what they do for us, it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask them, what have you done during the past year for Putney residents?
Which we do, and we get that information from them. I think that, what I would take away from your point about them being part of DHMC is part of exactly what we were just talking about. DHMC's ability to raise money is massive. Their budget is equally massive. But does it shift our responsibility to the local, I don't know how that, is it gonna be DHMC in the future that appears to, that appeals to us for an allocation, and if so, that would have a very different, like you say, to me, that's no longer a grassroots organization. They may be doing grassroots work in our community, but I think that would be a great question for equity and inclusion to explore, is
Right.
when a merger of that scale occurs, because as we know, I mean, DHMC is just gobbling up absolutely everything. Are they making money off it? Who knows? But, it shifts the equation.
That's last
So.
year.
And we do get all that info. I mean, anybody who's interested, they're in the town reports.
Right.
But even what's in the town report, we are definitely privy to more information than that if
Right.
we want it.
Correct.
1,347 home care visits
In
to
Putney.
63 Putney residents, and it included approximately $49,329 in unreimbursed care to Putney residents.
So,
I'm sorry.
and then if if you were to look at that side by side with Putney Community Cares, to your point of what an outside organization is doing in Putney, and I'm not,
Yeah, no,
I don't know how that bears out,
Yeah.
but,
I think it's worth looking at.
it's worth looking at,
Yeah,
definitely.
and I think equity inclusion is the right,
Yeah, I
Place
agree.
to start with it anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to their next meeting, so I'll bring this.
okay.
You got
What
something
you
else.
need
I,
for
well, I
that?
did, maybe we should look at why they,
Yeah,
the
if you can
agency
get a policy
required that,
from
is
a
it because the
digital, I'm sure I have a
manager
digital copy of
can't
this, but
function, they're
separated, so
losing
we can
money,
forward it
if
to
they,
them.
if they're not under that umbrella, then we lose that service, and does that mean then we shouldn't contribute because they're under a bigger organization? But wait a minute, we lose that service, and there's a lot of people, I know my mom is
Yeah.
benefited from that service.
No,
And
and
it's like,
that's,
so then you got to look at that part of it too.
absolutely,
So.
right. Well, and I think that, if, I don't know whether in absorbing them, they are, for all practical purposes, dissolving this,
Right.
or whether this will be its own entity that runs under the umbrella of, and that, again, would shift that equation. But it would be incumbent upon either the Visiting Nurse Alliance or DHMC to come to us in the future and say, this is what we're doing and this is why it's valuable to your community. Because if they, just listening to those numbers that Laura just read, that's a huge amount of services within Putney. And, for us to get all that for, I mean, not that they aren't getting insurance and other things, but, this is a small price to pay to
Yes.
contribute to that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I agree.
But-
We could probably talk about this for a year.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think? Should we, a year? You good? You in?
Did you bring your lunch? You brought lunch.
Did you bring lunch for next
I
week?
have granola bar in my bag.
All the chit chat, come on, all the chit chat.
All right.
So, there's no change in the social agency appropriations. We talked about the library. So, if you're ready to vote or approve the general fund budget,
Where's the total?
bring it up.
Okay. I move to approve the general fund budget for 2020 in the amount.
2021.
2021, sorry,
Okay.
in the amount of $1,415,586.56.
And I second that.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve the general fund budget in the amount of $1,415,586.56. If there is no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
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 That's a lot, I know. I know, it's a big gulp, right?
All right. Highway fund, any changes, anything you want to highlight?
No, I didn't make any changes to that.
Okay. So can you provide Laura with that number as well?
Please and thank you. Okay. I move to approve the highway fund budget for 2021 in the amount of $1,218,593.46.
And I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the highway fund budget in the amount of $1,218,593.46. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 You did better with that one, David.
Huh?
You did better with that
It's a
one.
little quicker coming out,
Sorry.
warmed himself up.
No, it's not that.
Sewer budget?
And we don't have
It's a
any,
different
Sewer
budget.
budget.
Sorry.
yeah. We don't have any changes in sewer or water either, right?
No, I did not make any changes.
Alright, so I move to approve the sewer department budget for 2021 in the amount of $275,932.
And I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the sewer department budget in the amount of $275,932. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, water budget.
Thank you.
I move to approve the water department budget for the year of 2021 in the amount of $152,053.
And I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the water department budget in the amount of $152,053. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to say thank you, Karen and Alyssa, for all the work that we know goes into that. And,
Yeah,
much
Alyssa,
appreciated.
you're welcome. Alyssa and Kim both
Thank you.
have been a big help.
Good,
And there's been a lot of eyes on the numbers and
good. All right, so, FY '21 articles for town meeting approval.
All right, so in your
But
packet.
those aren't FY '21 articles, are they? No, those are
No.
just articles for town meeting approval.
Right,
Right.
right. Yeah, she said 20.
I didn't see it somewhere.
So it's draft 4.
I don't think I have that. but I'll-
Yeah, everyone should. It's like in between
Yeah.
your budgets and your
I think I
financials.
found it. There it is.
You're looking for
There
just
you
right in
go.
front of us.
I did yours, Josh.
Have a copy, please.
Sorry, what's that?
Would the public have a copy of that, please?
Yes.
You can have mine.
Just a moment. Wait, no, I think.
Thank you.
All right. So,
There's a lot of papers there, Josh.
I know, throws me off.
So I had legal counsel review and he approved.
Okay,
In the warning, you will see the fire engine. So we discussed this in the last meeting with Tom. Actually, we discussed it a couple times. So it is in the warning as an Australian ballot vote because we're looking to bond with Vermont Municipal Bond Bank
right.
at 1.45%. So I don't know if that percentage rate will stay, but if you read the article,
Not to exceed 2%.
not to exceed 2%, and it's a 10-year note,
Right.
which is gonna save on
A
interest.
bunch of money, yeah.
Okay. What needs to happen with the bond bank, so we have to do a resolution. We have to post it in the paper, we gotta post it, in our usual places, but we definitely have to have a public informational hearing on this article. And,
In advance of town meeting?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
How many days in advance do you know?
Well,
Probably 15?
between, I think it was February 12th and the 22nd, so you get it 10 days before. What I'd like to do is,
Seconds. Go.
yeah,
Yeah,
what I'd like to do is do one in early February, and then if we have to have a second one, we can have it before town meeting.
why would we need to have a second one?
Just in case we may have a lot of questions.
So,
The 12th is our regular meeting.
it is, okay, that's
Yes,
what,
it is.
so
Yeah.
we'll have it
We could
in
do.
conjunction with
Yeah.
our regular, let's do
Yeah,
that.
I could do a 1/2 hour before.
Let's do
Yeah,
that.
I could do a 1/2 hour before.
Yeah,
And I would recommend having it at the fire station because it may bring people out and the equipment is right
It's
there
right
for
there.
people to
Yeah.
look at.
yeah.
Ooh, fun.
So we have that meeting, and if we get on the ballot, and if it gets voted to, we pursue bonding, and this whole process takes, if it all goes through, a
It-
year, 2 years?
No, so
I'm
what
trying to get an idea of
Right.
what putting it off for a year would mean for getting the truck, and what that would mean for increased cost of the truck and decreased cost in trade-in. I don't know how long this process takes.
So if this article stays on the warning and it's approved by the voters, so then I would have to work with the bond bank. And now, they award loans, bonds, like in the spring and the fall. So I would say we'd be looking at the fall, okay?
I think
Now,
last time it was in August. For the gravel pit, it was in August, it was right around August 1st.
yeah, it's just before.
Right.
Yeah, but that was a spring bond.
Allocation, was
Yes,
it? Okay.
yeah,
That's when the funds were released though. Okay.
right. Because we had already been working on that with
Yeah.
the bond bank.
Yeah,
So I'm thinking the timing would probably be in the fall. Now, according to Tom, the company that's gonna build the truck, so they don't take any money until we take delivery.
right.
So that whole timing too is gonna be, I gotta watch what's gonna happen here.
Mhm.
So we could be looking at money in the spring of '21. Or getting the truck in '21. Now, with the bond bank too, usually your first year is interest payments.
Right.
And then the next year is your
Principal
principal
plus
payment
interest,
with
right.
your interest. So our first payment may not be until fiscal year '22.
So this last payment on this truck, the 37,000 that we're paying
Yes.
this year,
Yeah,
and so we wouldn't be paying until '22 for that truck, if this all goes through, if it's an article, if it
Right.
gets voted in.
right.
Everything works the way you're projecting it, that is 1 year, 2021, where we don't have that payment, we don't have a payment for that.
We might have an interest payment, because usually the first year.
How long does it take to build a truck like that?
About 18 months.
What's that?
Yeah, see, and that's part of
Like
the
5,000, thank you.
issue with the timing.
Trying to get a bigger
Wow.
picture here, how we can keep some of these spaces.
And the
Too
question
small.
that goes with that, Laura, for me is
Yeah.
when in relationship to this, can Tom say, yes, go ahead, and when will they?
Right.
I mean, just because we vote on it, is their confidence level high enough that it's gonna, or do they wanna wait until the bond bank approves it before they start fabricating the truck?
Yeah.
I have no
Right,
idea.
right.
And
How
do those-
often
and
does
will
the,
those-
I'm sorry.
And will those things mean a difference in loss and increase in the cost of the truck and the value of the trade-in? And
Right,
Yeah.
when is it smartest for us to do this?
Yeah.
right.
Can we get that year without the payment and still lock in the best price for us and
Right.
how
And
do
does
we
the
work
bond bank not approve things
Not
often?
usually.
You typically, it essentially, unless you,
Miss a
Really
step
leave
in the
something out,
process. Yeah,
exactly.
if you
Okay.
miss a step in the process, I
Mhm.
could see them denying the loan.
Okay. So as long as we do our due diligence on
Yes.
our end.
there's a
and do-
very high likelihood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we are a secure town. I mean, there are instances where they will turn down bonds
Right.
for
Okay.
various reasons, but we are a
In
great
good
risk for
standing.
them. So,
Yeah, and they look at like our financials, our audits.
Uh-huh.
So they look at our fixed assets, everything that we have, and then and we did this with the gravel pit.
exactly.
So it's gonna be basically the same
at what
process.
point does that number become a problem if we were getting bond?
Okay.
Is that small enough in relationship to what our fixed
It's
assets are?
not an easy
that it'd
process,
Still
but-
always be a good risk.
We'll
If
get
I
through
have that
it.
much money, I don't know how much of that we still owe.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean,
Good
I
question,
would
I'm
think,
asking.
yeah, I would
How
think it
far
would
out
be,
are we?
I would guess it would be more about our track record of paying
Okay,
than anything else.
Okay.
You know, but you're right, debt to asset ratio, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they look at that, but, I think they, you know, I mean, their whole job is to try and be on our side.
Got it.
So, you know, I think we, also, as Karen said, we just went through this with the gravel pit. If there were red flags out there, I think we would have heard about them.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it's an interesting question. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, basically.
Because of our debt ratio.
Exactly.
Right.
What that looks like.
Right.
And, yes.
Like I said, they look at the audits and they go 3 years. So we have to supply 3 years worth of audits. And they review that.
Mr. Fairman.
Mr. Chairman, first just to mention that from lender's perspective, borrowers who have taxation power are especially good risks.
Of course, yeah.
I'll take the liberty of offering a suggestion regarding Articles 2, 7, and 8, and also a comment that Mr. Babbitt made. There's 3 different sets of debt service here. 1 10-year amortization, 2 5-year amortization, and you mentioned one that I believe is being retired this year or next year. It could be helpful to voters if you provided in some form a handout, either in the town report or separately, that shows a schedule of debt service over the next few years so we can see what's being added and also what's being retired. This is the kind of thing that voters would like to know.
It's always available, and
It's in the
it's
town
in the town
report.
report as well.
Yep.
Oh, indeed. However, let me put it this way. Something perhaps that summarizes that. That's a whole lot of numbers for a great many folks.
it sure is.
You may recall that last year we kind of summarized that enormous spreadsheet about the gravel pit. And this happened because a couple of your principals, when asked questions about it, said actually they weren't sure of the answers.
Right.
So we said, well, you know, we probably, you know, before this comes up at town meeting, we probably need
Probably
to
don't know those answers, yeah.
get it corralled.
Yeah.
That debt service spreadsheet too would most likely be at the public informational hearing. So people can look at everything.
See, the reason to summarize my point, there are certain numbers in there that are really important and others that simply say this is how we got to those really important numbers. And it could be something as simple as you boldface the numbers that are really important, so people can focus on those and don't have to look at the details that got there unless they want to. It's just because most people would like to have a bird's eye view and not get into the weeds.
Yeah.
It's in the town report, but in a
And
smaller
to some degree, that
version.
is there, those are
Yes.
Version. It's smaller.
exactly
A
what
little
the
bit
mentions
easier
is
to look
happening
at.
here.
Right here, Howard.
Yeah,
Except for Putney was spelled wrong.
and
And by the way, I wasn't trying to start an argument.
Oh, no, it's okay. We just wanted to,
Yeah.
because that's a condensed version.
We all know, yeah.
thank you, Mrs. Merrill.
Thank you.
Okay. So, one question that came up last time, and and I'm assuming since Larry didn't object to this, that I don't think it's any different, but there was the question of.
It is worded
It's
differently.
it's worded differently, but does it make clear that if this is approved, we will spend the money on a fire truck? Because that was the question, did we need 2 different, you know, one to get the bond and one to actually purchase the truck? Or is that sufficiently covered?
This is just to get the
Money.
sense that the voters want us to pursue.
Right,
Bond.
to incur the
Right.
debt.
Yes,
Right.
Right.
By purchasing the fire truck.
for
And
the
then
purpose
For
of
the
Right.
it.
purpose of, which
Right.
might not then happen.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct. And then the second one is, you know, the terms of the
Right.
bonding.
I feel like if I, you know, as a voter, I would assume that if I were approving a loan that,
for that purpose.
for that purpose,
Yes.
that
No.
would be the next
I
consideration.
agree, but that was part of the
Yeah.
reason we wanted Larry to look
Yeah.
at it,
Right.
was to make sure that it didn't need to be,
Right.
because on the gravel pit, did we have two different articles? I can't remember.
No, it was all
just-
wrapped
It
in
was all
one.
in one.
Yeah.
So in effect, the
We
idea
had
is
a
to-
conversation about entering into an interlocal
Right,
agreement that,
exactly, yeah.
That was the second one, yeah.
So in effect, pursuing the bond is their approval of buying the truck.
Exactly.
That is what
Correct.
you're saying.
Yes.
Ah,
Correct.
I didn't understand.
I think this makes it more clear than the last rendition of this we had.
Yeah, because I didn't have that first.
Separated out, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's very much how this was presented as well,
Yes.
so,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's a good model. All right, good. So do I hear a motion for the approval of the 2020 warning for annual meeting?
Howard has
Oh,
something to say.
Mr. Fairman, sorry.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. You know, you were considering the motion last year for the gravel pit, where there actually were two things. The first one was entering into an intermunicipal agreement.
Right.
And the second one is, if this happens,
Yeah.
do we bond for our share of the purchase price?
Yeah,
Here, from a town meeting participant's perspective, what I would be wondering is, okay, we vote to incur the bonded indebtedness. Who has the authority to authorize purchase of the truck?
Right, that's my question.
I think we
The
do
vote
once we
on
have,
that, right.
well, is it the voters, or once we've raised the money by a vote, do we, I mean, that's the nature of the
That's
question.
why I asked the
Yeah.
question to, then
Right.
maybe the truck wouldn't get bought, like,
Right, so here, it's Article 9, the way it was worded last year, Article 9. Article 8 was the Australian ballot for the indebtedness, and then Article 9 was, in the event that Article 8 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to enter into an interlocal agreement?
Right.
So, you know, the logical next question after Article 2 here is, you know, in the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to spend $550,000 towards the purchase of a truck?
So do we need
Precisely.
another article in there?
So,
I mean, Larry went through these.
I know, but maybe we should ask that? I mean, I'm fine approving this with that question pending. I mean, this does not clearly say, and I agree that the implication is
Yeah.
obvious, but if we don't get approval to spend that money, even though we got approval to bond for it, is that a problem for us? I mean,
So could we pass this with the stipulation that we are going to add an article that in the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to spend up to $550,000
Yeah.
if it's necessary
if it's necessary?
for us to have another article in there. I don't know, I mean, if Larry just read it, you would think he would have caught that,
Right.
but if he didn't catch it, and we have $550,000, but we
Right.
have to have a special meeting to get
Yeah.
voter approval to spend it, that would be too bad.
Right.
Do we have to get voter approval though to spend, I mean, I know that we
It's
prefer
sort of
to
the
do
same, I
that.
know, it's for $550,000, I think we do.
Yeah,
I think for the fire truck you do, highway equipment, no.
Right.
So the select
Okay.
board
Right.
can make that
At our
decision.
discretion.
okay,
Yes.
that was my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So then we should add another article, it seems like. I mean, that's my,
Can we type
Because
that
she
in
looked at
right
you.
now and just, because this is the thing, so these need to be posted by Sunday.
Okay,
Right, no, that's
so-
fine, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
would
we can,
be-
that's why I was looking at you.
In the
Thinking of pressure, and I
event-
didn't know what it was, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
so, I mean, there's two ways we could
Approve
do
it with the
this.
addition of an article following
Article
Article
2.
2. So all these article numbers will change.
Change,
Right.
right.
So Article 3 would be,
In the event that Article 2 passes, will the voters
Approve the purchase a fire truck for no more than $550,000.
Shall the
Exactly.
voters authorize the select board to borrow an amount?
No. Shall the voters, where's last year's? It's right here.
Yeah, that's where.
In the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to purchase
Oh, okay,
Right.
yeah, because we're already
A-
borrowing.
new fire truck in an amount not to exceed $550,000. So okay. Right.
And the
And then
terms
the
are
interest
all
rate,
laid out.
the interest rate has already been
Yeah.
approved in here, so
Yeah.
that's the
Right.
indication of the
Right.
more money that would be spent.
Right.
Yeah,
So.
so I would make a motion to approve the 2020 warning for annual meeting with the addition of an article stating, in the event that Article 2 passes, shall the voters authorize the select board to purchase, if needed,
Not if needed.
purchase
Yeah, purchase.
a fire engine in the amount of up to $550,000.
Okay, got it. Yep, I second that.
Yeah, that was a motion.
Okay.
That was a messy motion, but that was a motion.
You did very well.
Now, so it's been moved and seconded, now that opens it for discussion. Do we want to only insert that contingent upon
Larry's review.
exactly?
Yeah.
Or do we want to go ahead and put it in regardless? I don't think it would hurt us to have it in
No.
regardless.
I
Right.
have no experience, I can't.
So, I mean, I think
Makes
that,
it
you
very
know,
clear.
it makes it very clear. It also allows, I mean, Australian ballot, not related to office, not related to elections, are open for discussion, but it really prompts a discussion specifically about that if it doesn't come up under this.
Right,
So
yeah.
I think it's not a bad idea to include it in there.
Yeah, in conversation, I have to agree, because if that fails, the first article, then it's,
Then the
Point.
next article
Right.
would be moot.
right,
Right.
but you definitely need that second article to support.
I would think so.
Yeah, yep,
And if this fails, if the new
purpose.
article that we're putting in fails, then this is moot as well. Because we can't purchase it if they,
Well, then
Yeah.
you could do another meeting at another time.
Exactly,
Oh,
but
okay,
we will
yeah.
have gotten approval for the bonding.
Right.
so that we
If
could.
that passes, but this doesn't, we can keep having the conversation.
Okay, that makes sense.
now, that new article too is voted on the floor, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay,
does that make sense?
it does, because I think that's the way we did it last year
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. for the
Yes,
annual.
it was.
Yeah, so you
So,
kind of know at that point.
where
it's gonna go.
the only, I would fully agree with the motion,
Yep.
but I would probably make it contingent upon Larry's approval of council, just because he says, oh, in this instance, you can't do that because statute says that once
Right.
you've done this, you can't do that. So, that way we don't have to reconvene if he
Right.
says, no, you can't do that for some legal reason. Or we go with this, and if that's the case, we meet for 5 minutes on Friday and talk about it, either one. So let's go ahead with it as it is. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the town warning for 2020 with the addition of an article stating that in the event that Article 2 passes, the voters authorize the select board to purchase a new fire truck for an amount not to exceed $550,000.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Way to write lines as we're going.
Hey, better to cover it than not. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, you get through town meetings, then you go, oh.
Oh, no, what did we do?
Yeah, well, now it just means you have to have another meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, I was just gonna say, we have enough of
So
that.
I'll keep you posted, because I'm gonna get
Yeah,
on this
just
right away.
see what Larry says
Yeah.
about that. I think I think at a minimum, he'll agree that it won't hurt.
Right,
Yeah, if he says it's a disaster, then we revisit. Okay. Quarterly financials.
so in your packet are the quarterly financials for general fund, for the library, for the highway department, sewer and water. So we're 7 months into the fiscal year at this point. We're not gonna go into detail. These are, you
Yeah.
can look at them when you have time.
Just anything that leaps out at you or not?
Not really. I did want to talk about delinquent tax report though,
Mhm.
and the water, sewer, utilities. So delinquent delinquent tax report has gone down quite a bit.
Good.
So,
Where is that reflect? Is that one of our?
yeah. So that's towards the back. Keep going. Keep going.
Second. Next.
Keep going.
Delinquent tax report.
So the total delinquent taxes at this time is $75,985.65, which is low. So this is a good sign. We will be calling people after February. Taxes are due February 21st for the third installment. But Alyssa's been persistent. I've been persistent. So. As far as utility billing, we just had a quarterly billing at the end of December, and payments are due February 1st, so.
Sorry, I was spacing out. Say that once again?
Utility billing,
Oh, yeah.
so the quarterly billing was done at the end of December,
Mm-hmm.
so, payments are due on February 1st. And right now, the aged receivables report is $58,158.81.
Outstanding.
Yes. I'm not sure for new board members, but policy is delinquent taxes and utility billing, 1 year in arrears, usually. You can go to tax sale. So you can go to tax sale with utility billing.
Do we do that?
We haven't historically. We also, our policy is 2 years.
Okay.
We can,
I do 2 years, but policy states 1.
Does state.
our policy states
Yeah.
1?
Yep.
Interesting, because we've had that discussion numerous times over the years.
Yeah.
And we always,
No, I looked at the policy, Josh,
Have
'cause
anybody over a year?
I
Yes.
oh,
thought,
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was wrong doing 2 years, but it states 1 year. But,
Interesting.
If you look towards the bottom of that
It's a lot of
page,
work
David,
to
you'll
do it
see
every year
the
for
first
1 year.
one that's
Yeah.
in arrears over 120 days.
so I just wanted to make that comment.
Some of this is a significant amount of money.
Yes.
Wow.
And so are we in conversations with these
So what were you,
folks?
Yes.
what were you looking at that were?
Well, this is
Oh, these are the utilities, sorry, I was still looking at the delinquent tax.
Yeah, let's not
Yeah.
name names right now.
No, I don't
but,
know the names.
Well, these are public documents,
I
but we
know,
don't
but
need to
yeah,
name
it's
names.
nice
Yeah,
not to have to.
yeah,
Yeah, and that information too is in the town report without names, so property locations are in there.
Okay.
But, so sewer services, Laura, as an FYI,
Uh-huh,
you can't shut sewer off.
right.
okay.
I was gonna say. what-
You can shut water off,
You can shut water off, we can put liens on property,
yes.
and/or we can go to tax sale.
It just so happens that all those people that are over 120 days don't have water.
Water, they're only sewer.
Sewer and water bottom,
Yeah.
so we have no,
Right.
There's really no way to shut sewer off? Not that I want to, but like,
No,
there's,
it's a health, that's a health, that's
Okay, yeah.
statutory.
like, that's interesting.
Hmm.
So we can allow somebody to hook up to the line, but we can't disconnect them.
No.
Right, essentially,
Yeah,
Because
I'm
when they
not
chose
pushing to
hook up
do
our
that, it's
line,
just
they gave up their own
interesting.
system.
yes.
Yeah,
So,
but there are.
Well, plus, I mean, if you're out of water, you can purchase, if you're out of sewer,
And I don't want that to happen to
yeah,
anybody.
no, but it's
just-
an interesting question, yeah.
Yeah,
so how is that enforceable?
that's,
by liens.
yeah,
By
Exactly.
liens,
And tax sale.
property liens,
yeah, ultimately.
tax sale.
But that's so cumbersome and expensive and time consuming and.
Yeah.
Not really. So, history is, you send out,
People pay,
they will pay.
yeah, exactly.
We just have to be persistent and, you know,
And that's in fact the advantage, I think we had this conversation
Mhm.
once about that being the advantage of doing it annually as opposed to every 2 years, is that it prevents people from getting
So
that
far.
much further in,
Right.
you know, so. But yes, the history is, you know, if you took all these people and put them on a list saying your house is gonna go up for tax sale because your utilities, you know,
3/4.
86% of this would get paid within,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
well, it's
so-
like tax sale last year. We had 36 properties when we
Right.
first started.
And you end up with, yeah,
Yeah, we ended up with less than a handful
Right.
at tax sale.
Right,
So they will
but
pay.
you're right, it takes a lot of work.
yeah, and
The other thing too with utilities, water, sewer, the users pay. All of those users have to pay to support that system.
Mhm.
So when we're not collecting money, you know, we gotta get that money from somewhere else.
Right. No, I get that. This isn't for profit.
Right.
I get it. It's not
Right.
like we made a profit and there's extra money. So
Right,
I
right.
get it. I get it.
Yep,
Yeah.
You know,
I get that.
the other thing is the vast majority of this money is current.
Right.
It's not overdue.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's overdue, but it's currently overdue, it's not.
16,000 is overdue?
It's 120 days overdue.
Right.
Got it.
right.
How much?
16,000.
So like 36,000 is current.
Right. And most of that'll come in.
And most of that'll come in, yeah.
Exactly.
So 40% of it is 120 days, 16,
Right.
33, 60.
So the 120 days though,
Yeah.
Alyssa and I will,
No, I get
we'll work those
Current.
properties and see what we can collect.
90 days.
Sometimes it's just a friendly reminder, you
it. So
know?
this-
Right. And then, I mean, and then the folks who aren't gonna pay in a timely fashion, aren't gonna pay in a timely fashion, and
Right.
those are the ones that are challenging,
Do
so.
you set up payment plans for people that are?
Yep, we have payment plans for taxes.
No, I meant for the sewer and water.
I've never had to do that.
I'm just, some of these
But-
amounts are a little steep, and I'm wondering if a payment plan would, it's like
Yeah.
a big chunk to bite off if you're trying to do it all at
How old are
once.
some of
Yeah.
the ones that are 120 days?
Oh.
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
So, did those places go up for tax sale that are 3 years? They didn't.
No.
So how long do you wait before, it's 2 years before you put it up? It says 1 year, right?
Right.
But we haven't done it.
I'm gonna do 2.
Got it.
and
So some of
this'll be
them
the
would have been
first time.
eligible this last year.
Right.
Got it.
If we could at least encourage people to start paying like their current bill and maybe working a little bit off
That's the
from the
tricky part,
past.
yeah.
Right. And payment plans for utility billing,
Uh-huh.
services. I don't mind doing a payment plan, you know.
But it has to get you a little bit ahead over
Yeah.
time, not,
Right.
you know, you can't keep widening that gap even though
Yeah.
you're on a plan.
And the
Yeah.
other thing too is that even though somebody sets up a payment plan, if they're not active, 6 months down the road, I can do a
Right.
tax sale
Yeah,
or a lien. See, the thing with a lien for utility services, that number is gonna change, because you're gonna do interest every month. So it's not a steady number, it's not a firm number.
well, the problem is we don't also end up redeeming it until a property sells.
Right.
Potentially, so that's not an effective way to do it,
Not for utility services,
Right.
it's not.
yeah.
Have any of these folks that are, I mean, some of these are water as well, have we ever shut anyone's water off?
We have threatened with certified mail,
Okay.
and they do come in and pay.
Okay.
But as Karen said, some of those are bond payment only.
Okay.
So that
Right.
means they don't actually have water in there, water being supplied to them by us. They've reserved a spot
Yeah.
in the water system and they're paying on it. And some
Yeah.
people, that's a point of contention with some people and they
We
get,
should revisit that
Yeah.
conversation too.
I really hate
that's-
the idea of shutting someone's water, but I mean, a tax sale is even more, doesn't sit well with me at all, so.
Well, what happens
Yeah.
there is they incur legal costs as
Yeah.
well.
I
yeah,
was gonna say, we recover all the costs it takes for us to try to get our payment too,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
it goes into.
I mean, it
the-
depends on, I mean, we're already paying to have that process being done, so we don't pay we pay additional to Larry,
Yes.
but we're not paying more in-house for that because it's a
No.
service we already
Got it.
do. So it sort of depends on how you look at it, but,
Yeah,
but yes, when Larry does a tax sale for us, that's rolled into the price of.
it is, and it can be up
Right.
to $1,000.
Right,
Right at the gate.
I would think that would be a deterrent to already encouraging them to come pay the bill, because.
Yeah.
We send out probably 3 letters before we send it to Larry. So we do our due diligence to work with everyone.
And the hard thing is, the hard thing is some of these people are just unable to make their payments.
Right.
I mean, they can have the best of intentions, they can set up a plan,
Yeah.
but they can't do it,
Yeah.
and then that happens. I mean, it's just a reality, unfortunately. But it can't be, we can't underwrite that indefinitely, because that's.
That's
not
a much
fair.
bigger and longer discussion for another
Yeah.
time about how communities could
Well,
help those people and.
we have the White Whitney Fund. We
Yes.
could- And, I mean, we don't, but it's
There
available.
are options.
Places that
It's
they
out
go
there.
for.
Uh, Yes, and in fact, we've had interesting discussions based on that in the past, in which, there are people who, we had one, I don't know, 3 years or 4 years ago, where, they had had a fire at the house and the taxes had been abated on the fire, but they owed previous and so on and so forth. And they came in with somebody from one of the services on our social services list, I can't remember who it was, who basically was there saying, hey, we've come up with a plan and we're working together.
Got it.
We're all here in a good effort to get this taken care of. And we didn't send it to tax sale because we said,
Right.
okay, that's
Of course.
fine,
Right.
as long as this is all in place. So, there are ways around it, but unfortunately, more often than not, it's the folks that either don't access that additional help or are unwilling, for any number of different reasons,
Sure.
they don't go there, then it goes to tax sale, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
So do we, when we're having these conversations with people, do you try to point them in that direction of like talking to Putney Community Cares, talking to the folks that,
White Whitney.
yes, yeah, that there are services out there that may be able to help?
I haven't come across anybody that's like destitute to,
Uh-huh.
they don't ask, but I mean,
It does happen. I mean,
Yeah.
dealt with it a number of, yes, where we say,
Right.
you know, have you reached out to so-and-so?
Okay.
You know, but it's, you know, we can only do so much in that respect, because unless they come to us and
Right.
specifically say, can you help me with this, then we
Right.
can't really help them with that. So
And
that's a
yeah,
challenge.
These people aren't responding.
Not
instead.
likely, exactly,
So we
not
haven't
likely
even
to
had
do
any
that.
conversations with them.
The other thing, I think, and I may be mistaken, is that because White Whitney is a fund of the towns,
We oversee,
well,
the select board
right,
oversees
right.
Whitney, yeah.
but I don't think I can ever recall, and I think that this is written into their thing, it can't be used for taxes, I'm pretty sure. Because
Right.
essentially, it's taking from us in order to pay us.
That makes sense.
And that's my recollection, I might be wrong.
White
But-
Whitney operates on interest from
Mhm,
their
yeah.
CD, so they're only allowed.
It's limited, right.
It's limited, and we've seen them use money for rent, car repairs, electric bills.
All sorts of things, yeah.
Those kinds of things, but never, ever a tax
And
payment.
I don't think they can use it.
But
for
maybe
that
it could
payment
flex
directly.
around that, so we'll pay your electric, your grocery bill,
If
and your
you-
car payment
So
this
you
month, and
have
you
the
pay
money to
your.
pay
I don't know
Water
whether they, I
bill.
don't know whether they have the leverage to actually enforce that
Yeah.
in any way.
So I have a question.
They're restricted to by, so much for each person.
Right,
So
Uh-huh.
there's
Pretty
a
small.
whole criteria that people have
Right.
to, before they're even approved,
Mhm.
so.
question.
So some of these people who don't actually have water, but they have the water bond, the
Yes.
reservation. Do you or Karen and I are we allowed to take them off of having that
No.
reservation? To stop it from incurring?
No, they have to come to the water commissioners.
Exactly. And numerous people have done that over the years, and I would be surprised with the ones that are on this list that have been there for a long time if they haven't been told that that's what they need to do, and they may not have done that. But no, we can't take them off unless they request it.
Right,
Even if they request it, you know, essentially, they agreed to pay that amount in order to be that on there.
to
You know,
reserve it.
what we've done in the past is work through things with people where we've said, okay, you pay X amount, you know, because certain people get up to a certain point where they say, oh, well, we knew, you know, 2 years ago, we decided not to build the additional apartment, and that meant we didn't need the water. So we don't want to pay it. So we've done, you know, we've worked things out with people, but they have to come to us and say, you know, this is what we're trying to do, and this is why
Well,
we're doing it.
right, I don't mean like take off what's built up,
Well, that's,
but
To
just
stop incurring more
stop,
bill.
right, to be like,
Yes.
okay, well, you're gonna lose your allocation because you haven't paid and
I don't know, you'd have to look at the policy, I'm
They
not
still
sure
have to
you
come
can do
to you.
that, I think so.
They have to come
Yeah.
to you, because that payment is paying on the bond.
And it's a reservation
And
of
it's
a
a
slot.
reservation,
Yeah.
and it was built based on the number of users.
Right,
And
So-
it's build on a number of users.
Yeah,
Right.
and we can't, and we cannot, we're not allowed to change allocation in the system.
Right.
That has to go through the water
Us,
commissioners as well,
right.
water sewer. So any changes has to be made by the user in
Yeah.
front of this board.
Yes, and it has to be, essentially, the problem is that creates a liability, you know, if we were to take somebody off of that list, and 6 months later, they came and said, okay, we're building a new house and we wanna go on the thing, and we say, sorry, you lost your
or
allocation.
our well failed or.
Yeah, or whatever it might be, right.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can't have done that, so they do have to keep accumulating that, unfortunately, and it's, you know,
And the ones that have been paying right along, you know, when they're ready to hook up, then they're okay. They don't, you know, they don't have to come up with $5,000 or more.
right, but they do have to come up with money for the engineering and for the connection and
And the
everything
connection, yeah,
else, so.
yeah.
But they've reserved
Yeah.
that spot, I mean, that's the
Right.
whole thing, you're paying
Yes.
for a reservation. I
Yeah.
mean, that's,
And there's an application fee and there's a connection fee.
There aren't many of those left in town, as I recall. I mean, how many, do you
No,
know
there's-
how many there are? 'Cause
Maybe a handful now.
exactly,
Yeah,
because
I
we've
came
worked
across
through
an
them a
old
number of
list,
times, yeah.
and,
There were a lot for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's been slowly chipping away.
yeah,
And largely, it's slowly chipped away because people look at this and go, wait a minute,
right,
I'm either gonna spend that money and get hooked up, or I'm gonna
right,
get myself out of it.
Yep.
All right. So, we don't need action on any of this, right?
no, that's just
Okay.
informational.
So, town manager's report.
So third installment of property taxes are due February 21st. Town Hall is doing a food drive for the Putney Food Show. So I know we'll have a lot of traffic with taxes being paid here. So if anybody wants to donate to the food drive for the Putney Food Show, please bring an item. Town report is just about finished. So Kim and Alyssa have done a lot of work in the last week, cleaning it up, formatting it. Mary Quinn has a copy right now, she's gonna proof it. Jonathan has proofed it quite a bit, so there's been a lot of eyes on it. So water and sewer is due February 1st, and then that's about it.
All right. Warrants.
I move to accept and execute the warrants as presented upon completion of review.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded to accept and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Payroll warrant dated January 31st, 2020, in the amount of $22,803.67. And we have fire department, we have rec league in there. So it's bi-weekly
Several
now.
snowstorms.
Yeah, so it's bi-weekly now. So it should be consistent with library, the only ones we wouldn't have consistently is the rec department, they only get paid once a month.
Boy, those highway guys are resistant to get on electronic payments, aren't
They
they?
don't wanna do that.
Man.
They like going to the bank.
I try. Is there a-
Yeah, we can't force them.
Well,
But,
at some point, we probably couldn't we?
I don't know, they're pre-existing, so.
No, I think you can, if you want to. You just have to.
Give them warning and say, guess what?
What if somebody doesn't have a checking account though?
Yeah, we have somebody like that, so,
That's an exception
Yeah.
probably, but other than that,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think we can force them.
well, we probably could.
I don't think there's a law that says you can't.
Right, but is there a law that says you can? I don't know.
Is there a way to replace them into it? Like,
Accounts payable dated January 18 through January 31st, 2020, in the amount of $45,459.11.
do they have to pick their checks up here?
Yes. Well, they don't, but Brian usually grabs them, or someone grabs all of them.
Makes me think of a funny story of my dad who would keep his uncashed checks in his wallet for up to a year.
We
When
have
drive bill
somebody
get
like
all
that.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I told him, I said, it'd be a lot easier if you just did direct deposit.
But I would say if you don't cash it, you don't spend it.
Yeah, but you could lose it.
Yeah, he wouldn't lose it. He wouldn't.
Cargill is salt, presumably.
What was that?
Cargill is salt.
It is salt, yes.
For the road salt or water salt?
Yeah, road salt.
So Alyssa, I don't know from memory, so have we gotten other Cargill invoices or are these the, yeah?
We've had them, right?
Okay. I just don't remember. We did have some Green Mountain power bills and I don't know if you noticed, but
I saw.
yeah, $1,214 for wastewater treatment plant.
Is the Green Mountain portion? Wait, say that
Is the
again?
Green Mountain portion,
Is it?
yeah,
Not making as much power these days.
right.
Not surprisingly. It's actually that shed, the equipment shed down at the treatment plant just to the south of the
Right,
is a place
right.
we've talked about having panels, solar panels as well.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of space down there that there could be panels actually.
Where is, I thought the fire department was in here. Let me-
I'm thinking
All right.
clearing the bank behind my house, putting some up. We're talking about mini splits, I did some research online, it'd be perfect for my house.
Yeah. Okay, other business, Forest for Learning.
So,
One set,
Okay.
Forest for Learning, go ahead.
so I had a conversation with Larry,
Yeah,
so
this
I
is for the
brought-
pool,
this is for the pool
Right.
property.
yeah.
So Larry was concerned that the Development Review Board approved a permit for 0.92 acres. And Larry's question was, why didn't you do it for an acre? Why an odd amount of acreage? So the pool,
Difference, isn't it?
the pool is connected to the sewer.
Right,
So zoning regulations, it meets the zoning regulations at 0.92 acres. Hooked up to sewer.
right.
So if we decided not to be hooked up to the sewer, which there would be no reason not to be, there's no way you could put a septic down there
Right,
because it's in the flood plain anyways. So
right.
we're restricted unless you put it in the parking
Why
lot.
would we want to consider that
We
anyway?
don't. So Larry's just,
But making it an acre would be advantageous how?
Yeah, exactly.
it wouldn't. I mean,
Right. Well,
I
so
don't-
why is he bringing that point up?
You must have a reason.
Well, it's because of the sewer. So if we didn't want to be on the town sewer,
If you had an acre and you
Right.
could put a septic system in, you
But
could
we
do it
can't.
on an acre, but not
Right.
on .92,
Right.
that's the point.
right, you would
Okay.
have to have an
Is
acre,
that what he's saying?
you would have to have an acre in order to put septic
Ah,
in the village.
Yeah, no, we don't, that doesn't matter to
Okay.
us.
So in Lionel's, when he went through the process, you know, he was saving the town maintenance on all the invasives and trying to protect, you know, the endangered species that are out there. So I'm comfortable as a zoning administrator keeping it at 0.92 acres and not changing it, because there's no need to. And-
The only reason to change it is related to sewer.
Right,
Yeah, no, that doesn't
So-
seem, because I'm assuming we don't pay a sewer bill to ourselves for the pool? Or do we?
That's a good point, you don't.
I don't think we, I
Well, we don't
never,
have to, I mean, we
Right.
shouldn't. So,
no,
Well, yeah, but everybody else does.
yeah.
what do you mean everybody else?
We
does?
get a bill that we,
Yeah, the
Town
fire
hall gets a bill?
station, town hall
Oh,
does,
is
yeah,
that
we do pay those, so,
Huh, interesting.
do we, I
but
don't,
there isn't one for the pool, why is that?
maybe the school's paying for it.
Why?
I don't know,
Why do
good
we-
question, I'll have to look at that.
That doesn't make that much sense to me that
But-
we,
When they figured the plan, there were a number of sites that were the towns that didn't go into the figuring out the cost of the system.
It's all user fees, so. So, yeah, I mean. You're
I
paying
mean,
for
we
the
journal
bond,
entry,
you're
we
paying
don't
for
write
the
our own
bond,
check, or,
so.
you know what I mean, that,
Yeah,
yeah,
But we move money.
exactly.
well, it goes into that
no,
fund, right,
I'm all for taking it out.
so.
Yeah, I would-
Larry's wants to know if we want to move forward. So again, in order to do that boundary line adjustment, we still have to warn it, 30
Right.
days in advance.
Right.
And he has to do all the title work, okay? So Lionel's gone ahead and done a deed,
right,
but there's a right of way,
right.
and it was mapped out as 20 feet, I think, but it's actually 30. So Larry definitely needs to
Needs to do title work.
so that's gonna cost the town money.
So what's the other option? Not to go ahead, in which case what happens?
Then we have to keep in mind that they're trying to transfer the
Right,
school forwards
right,
to Forest for Learning, because the town still
Right.
has that.
right.
So this boundary line adjustment, they're trying to do it in tandem with that.
But we can't.
Right,
remember
no, I
to show
understand that,
Yeah.
but so why wouldn't we want, why wouldn't we go ahead with this? Because of the costs involved. But if we don't go ahead with it, what's the repercussion? Part of our pool sits on their land, or is it just they want that? I guess I know we've been over this, but I don't understand.
So it's been permitted to do the boundary line adjustment.
Right,
So at this point, and you can appeal it, you have a certain amount of days to appeal that permit. So, I mean, we agreed to move forward with the boundary line
Right.
adjustment, so.
right.
Now Larry's gonna have to do the title work and, make sure it's clean.
So is Larry recommending what, I guess I'm, again, sort of missing the
No,
point.
he wants to know what you guys wanna do. Do you want?
Well, is he recommending against moving forward?
No, he's not.
Okay,
that. He was only recommending changing the acreage size of the pool in case, to
Right.
protect that spot
Right,
in
and
the
I'm
future
not
for septic.
concerned about
And
changing
we don't need to
the
worry about that.
acreage.
I wouldn't think
Yeah,
so.
okay,
So-
all right.
So I will talk to Larry tomorrow when I talk to him about the articles
Right,
and let him know we do want to move forward. I'll try to get some sort of
yeah,
cost associated with this. But I also recommend he do the title work so it's a clean
so
title.
it's done. Yeah, we
And
have
it
to-
can be a warranty deed,
Yeah,
so everything's clean,
yeah,
okay?
and that's what he would recommend,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah, and he needs to look too to make sure there's no glebe land
right.
associated.
No what?
Glebe, Glebe. So I'm not too familiar with that.
What does that mean?
It's essentially commonly owned, well, it's land that was allocated from the town for use by people who didn't have land, essentially, I think is
yeah.
my understanding of it. Sort of.
Sort of like town
But why
Just
would
like
there be
shared.
glebe land there? Yeah, I don't know.
He brought it up, so
He thinks there's some history?
if he does the title work, his
He'll
office.
find out,
He will
Right.
find out.
right,
Because what he's nervous about too is, giving a warranty deed and not having clean title, because that liability will be on him.
right.
So he does need to do the title work.
Now, the town is giving this to the Forest for Learning.
Yes.
Is there any reason why the Forest for Learning wouldn't reimburse for the cost of the title work?
Because they're a nonprofit
Yeah,
and.
With no money?
Because they don't have the money.
Yeah, and they were
It's
given
not-
that money, that 18,000.
Right,
That
to
we're
take care
holding.
of this.
Right.
Right,
To make sure they finish this
Right.
process.
And this is all essentially to separate it from the school because of the
Yeah.
change in the school zoning.
Consolidation,
Right,
yep,
exactly,
yep.
right. Which
And it
keeps
was-
it in our hands.
Right,
It was
Right.
something that we agreed to
Right.
a couple of years back where, yeah.
no, it
Yes.
definitely makes sense.
yes,
I
yeah,
mean, it's just, it takes time. Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, it turns out I have two things to mention.
Okay.
Concerning glebe land, of course, you need to check what I say as well, because it's worth what you're paying for it. But my understanding of New England history is all the towns in New England were granted before there was the United States or even a confederation, before the Revolution.
Yeah.
And so they were British colonies, and a requirement was that land be reserved in each town for the established church, the Church of England. And my understanding is that this is what glebe land is.
Is that the glebe? Okay.
But as I say, that's just my understanding. Now, of course, these people were looking for good farmland, so the glebe land, they made that some land that wasn't good for much. That's simply my understanding. But the other thing was, I thought I would briefly mention, coming back to the question of donations to various organizations and DHMC being taken over, visiting nurses and hospice being taken over by DHMC. Are you familiar with what One Care Vermont is?
By name only, but I
Okay.
don't know. Yeah.
All right. See, it would be now 3 years ago, the Green Mountain Care Board entered into an agreement with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. There was an initial year to get started, and then it's a 5-year contract, which culminates in 2022. Now, the idea is that One Care Vermont, which is owned and operated as a limited liability corporation by Fletcher Allen Healthcare of Burlington and DHMC of Lebanon, but now we're talking only about their Vermont, DHMC's Vermont patients, that people would be enrolled in One Care Vermont as an accountable care organization, where the accountable care organization receives for each person a flat payment per year, which of course is doled out monthly, for keeping the people healthy. Now, I checked online a few minutes ago. At the moment, 172,000 Vermonters are enrolled, but they mentioned, and I read the contract. The contract says that by 2022, 70% of all Vermonters and 90% of all Vermont Medicare recipients shall be enrolled in One Care Vermont, or what translated into plain English, the contract with CMS says, Green Mountain Care Board makes it happen, or we will make it happen. So this is where we're headed. Now, I've not checked recently what the actual amounts are for the all-inclusive population-based payments are, but I can tell you for sure that for Medicare recipients like me, it's around $9,000 a year. As I say, they're enrolling more and more people, and CMS says, you're going to get this done, or we'll do it for you. Now, with that in mind, DHMC for the enrolled people is receiving a flat rate for each person.
Right.
Which of course includes the care provided by visiting nurses and hospice. So in the future, they and some other organizations, they for sure, and some organizations possibly, will be simply receiving their portions of the all-inclusive population-based payments. And if that is the case, they may no longer need donations from towns, because they're being financed otherwise, and on an effectively mandatory basis. So really, it is a single-payer system.
Right.
There's a number of these experiments being run around the country. Vermont happens to have one of them, but we're the one where they're really experimenting with the idea that you get so much a month for each patient, you keep them healthy, and if there's money left over, you get to keep it.
Right.
Now, of course, this certainly raises the question of how do they deal with the ethics of, we want to keep the money, but this person, me for example, is really sick. What are we going to do?
Right.
And of course, this does put them in an ethical dilemma. What they're hoping is that it will average out extra for me, less for somebody else.
Yeah.
But that's where we are and where we're headed.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I've been following this since the beginning because I thought it was really interesting in terms of the whole question of medical insurance in this country.
Well, I think very basically it sounds like promoting proactive care, which is great. We should obviously be doing that. But if they're, like you say, if they're getting that check, but they're not promoting that care, then, that's not what you're saying, but you know, that's the potential, is what that ethical dilemma is.
Well, yes, although I was not thinking about it in terms of they're doing something wrong. I was thinking of it in terms of it's guaranteed someone is going to get really, really sick.
Yes, definitely,
Just because life is like that.
yeah. Oh. Have to see how it plays out over time, eh?
So it may be a question to ask these organizations in the future, are you part of One Care Vermont?
Yeah.
Right.
That would be the question. Are you part of One Care Vermont? Because if you are participating for sure in the all-inclusive population-based payment.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Good point.
All right. Executive session? No. Next meeting date, February 12th.
Unless I have to call one sooner. You're gonna have to sign the articles,
Okay.
the warning. I'm gonna need signature before Friday.
Well, we can stop in then.
I will contact you. Okay.
So if we can all plan, okay, so you just need to get that one question sorted out. But if we all plan essentially on stopping by sometime on Friday, that would cover that.
And I can be here
Day
early in the
after tomorrow,
morning.
Friday.
What's
If
that?
I can,
Day after tomorrow, Friday.
Yes.
if I can get it cleaned up by tomorrow, I will contact you
Good.
when it's ready to go,
Right.
and then you can come in and
Sounds good.
Because that has to be posted, right?
by
Not,
Sunday.
not, okay,
Right.
not in the town report, okay.
Well, it has to be in the town report too.
Right, but not signed up.
Right.
Good night. Thanks for
Good night,
coming.
Howard.
Howard.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.